So Danielle Levesque is an associate professor of in biology and ecology at the University of Maine, an evolutionary and ecological physiologist. Born in New Brunswick, Canada, Danielle traveled the world studying hibernation and energy use in small mammals in Australia, Madagascar, South Africa, and Malaysia before accepting a position at the University of Maine. Research in her lab studies how rigidity or flexibility in metabolism and body temperature regulation affects the energy use of species and how their evolutionary history has shaped these patterns. This can help us understand the past as well as help predict future responses to global climate change. And her pop culture reference is CBC Radio's Quirks and Quirks.
Got to represent Canada a little bit, especially these days. Oh, well, thanks, Kate. You helped cut a couple of seconds off the introduction to my talk. So understanding how species might respond to climate change, we're not quite there yet. We still have to understand how they respond to climate to start with. And so that, for something like a mammal, is this complex interplay between processes going on within the animal and then the external factors. And in a 5-minute talk, I definitely don't have time to talk about the environment. So instead, we're going to focus on the animals. And for something, again, like a mammal that produces its own heat, it's always this trade-off between things that help you deal with cold, like shivering, insulation help keep it in, and then things that help you deal with the heat. And these are very species dependent. We're a bit weird, right? We don't have great insulation, but we're really good at sweating. We don't quite know as much as we'd want about the responses to heat in mammals as we'd like. We know a lot about cold because some of it's really relatively simple. Have more fur, create more heat. Responses to heat are a lot more variable. You have sweating, panting, and so on. And there's a lot of variation. The other thing that we look a lot at my lab is different patterns in particular traits of mammals that we think might kind of change how they respond to climate. One of the ones we focus on quite a bit is body temperature. So what we have here is a range of body temperatures found in mammals. Oh, sorry, I keep forgetting to add the Fahrenheit for everybody. Just to show we're kind of smack dab in the middle of mammals. And on the cold end, we have weird spiny things that look like hedgehogs, but are actually closely related to elephants. On the higher end, we have things like tree shrews that look like squirrels, but are closely related to primates. And there's full range in between. And if we plot this on the mammal family tree, if people want to know more about tree shrews, I'm happy to talk at the reception. You can sort of see that from what we think of as the ancestral mammal condition, which would have been a low and variable body temperature, we now have this spread of distribution, especially with a lot of different patches that have evolved high body temperatures over time. Things like ungulates, carnivores, lagomorphs, everything that runs really, really fast tends to have a high body temperature. And actually, just last week, we got the results of a comparative genomic analysis run by some of my collaborators at the University of Las Vegas, Nevada, and the Broad Institute. And I have not had time to look at the data yet. So if anybody's interested, you could send me an email. But I think there's different processes happening in each of these groups to make them hot. So how we then take data from species that we can stick in boxes and understand and apply to other species that might be harder to catch because they're endangered or in weird places is something that we're slowly working on. Which brings us to Maine. And why Maine is such a great place to study animals and climate is we have this broad climate range. And where we are here, we're at the southern edge of the boreal forest. And so we have these nice species pairs that we can study. The sort of bigger, bitier ones that can be a little bit challenging to study are things like lynx and bobcat or marten and fisher. And so we've started with the northern and southern flying squirrels. When I first moved here, everybody convinced me that on campus we had northern flying squirrels. That's not true. We now have southerns. We found the northerns up in Presque Isle, and it turns out they haven't crossed the Penobscot yet. So what they actually have at Mount Desert Island, where we have a collaborator at College of Atlantic, is northerns. So today I'm going to present a little bit about what we've been doing with responses to heat in southern flying squirrels, just to show, spoiler alert, they're pretty good with the heat. They live in Mexico. They're fine, even our Maine ones. But we're waiting to get data on the northerns, and that'll come in the next few years. So what we do, oh, and this is last year's presentation. I'm supposed to have a disclaimer here that says all of our animals are covered by permits, so don't do this at home. But what we do is we capture them in the field. We inject them. Here's a temperature-sensitive pit tag, so it's similar to the microchip that goes into your pet, and it allows us to monitor their body temperatures as we expose them to heat. And to do that, we take them to the lab. We put them in little boxes that allow us to measure their metabolic rate and water usage, as we heat them up. Just wanted to show here the adorable summer feet of the northern flying squirrel. In the winter, these are fluffy because they need insulation, but in the summer, it's different. We implant them with temperature-sensitive data loggers, and it gives us an idea of what they're doing in the wild. So here we have a southern flying squirrel. It's higher when it's active at night, and then during the day when it's resting, it tends to drop its body temperature, except when the trees get really warm and it goes up. We're still trying to figure out some of this. Flying squirrels are actually very hot, so we put them back on our mammal thing. Even at rest, they're hotter than most mammals. Not quite sure what's going on there. This might be about stress. We're not quite sure. But we do know that they're good with the heat, and we were hoping that they would use their patagium to lose heat. It turns out they use their feet more when it gets hot. Anyway, no problem yet heat with the southern flying squirrels, trying to figure out with the northerns. And I'll just end there with some big questions that we're hoping to look at.
Any questions for Doug? Great, come on down.
So what is it that you're trying to use this knowledge for? Like, it's really cool and I love animals. So what are we hoping that how this will affect us and what?
Yeah, so something like seeing that they end up sort of in a zone where they might be using more energy and water as it gets hot allows us to kind of model what conditions might be a problem for them. Again, we don't think for the southerns it's a problem, but for the northerns it might be. So some of it is just sort of seeing what they do under controlled conditions and then matching it up with biologging in the field, which is a lot newer technology. Those tiny little things are only a couple years old. Just to see how they're doing now and then potentially predict the future. But yeah, looking at responses to heat in an animal at the northern edge of their range isn't going to tell you much. We just couldn't find the northerns the first year we tried it.
Do you have another mammal you want to look at next after the squirrel?
I'd love to work on snowshoe hare. I think they're really interesting. They have the most constant. So here's the flying squirrel. The active and the resting body temperatures are really different. The snowshoe hare has the most constant body temperature of any mammal, and I think it's because they live in a state of complete stress all the time. It's called the landscape of fear is the official biological term, and I think that has to do with part of that, and how they respond to heat is going to be really interesting.
How would you test that if they're always stressed?
Carefully.
Okay. Is it a cortisol level thing? Like, could you test that?
So the interesting thing about flying squirrels is they have the highest levels of free circulating stress hormones in their blood that's been measured in mammals so far. And so it might be part of the story. We don't actually know. Yeah.
So, have you noticed over the years as climate got warmer that these species of squirrels have migrated to different climates?
Yeah, definitely. So the Holt Research Forest, which is down in Bath, has a really great data set. They showed that the southerns first arrived in 96, I think, and then by 2005, the northerns were completely gone. And so the story there seems to be that the southerns are a little more aggressive despite being half the size. So if you have the flying squirrels in your house, chances are it's the southerns and not the northerns. They also carry a parasite that kills the northerns. So they're definitely moving up. And some of it is basically just like a natural progression because every animal that we have here in Maine was down south after the Laurentian ice sheet melted like 10,000 years ago, but it has increased over the last couple of decades for sure. Yeah.
Last chance. Thank you, Danielle.